The air in Courtroom 7 was heavy with murmurs, a low, restless hum that echoed off the marble walls and vaulted ceiling. Reporters scribbled frantically in their notepads, cameras clicked discreetly, and spectators craned their necks to get a better look at the young man seated at the defense table. Michael Thompson, once the golden heir of Thompson Industries, looked nothing like the photographs plastered across magazines. His tailored suit hung too loosely on his frame now, his cheeks were hollow, his eyes rimmed with fatigue. 6 months of hearings had worn him down to a shadow of himself. At the bench, Judge Harrison, stoic, silver-haired, every word he spoke weighted with 3 decades of judicial authority, adjusted his glasses and sighed. "Mr. Davis," he said, his voice cutting through the courtroom's murmur, "you're telling me you can no longer represent your client?" Richard Davis, sleek in his navy tie and polished shoes, gave a shallow bow of the head. "Yes, Your Honor, irreconcilable differences. I regret to inform the court that I must withdraw from this case." A gasp rippled across the gallery. Even the prosecutor, Linda Morrison, arched an eyebrow in surprise. But Michael just closed his eyes and lowered his head, resignation pressing on his shoulders like iron. The judge lifted his gavel, poised to bring it down. "Very well. This court will stand in. I can defend him." The voice was tiny, high-pitched, but it cut through the air like a blade through silk. Every head turned in unison toward the back row. There she was, 8-year-old Emma Johnson, her skinny legs dangling from a wooden bench, sneakers scuffed, and her oversized pink dress hanging like borrowed fabric. A single rubber band barely tamed her wild curls, but her eyes, huge, unblinking, alive with fire, locked on the judge with a courage that dwarfed her small frame. The courtroom erupted in whispers, whispers and muffled laughter. Judge Harrison's gavel struck again. "Young lady," he said, voice low and stern, "this is not a place for games." Emma slid off the bench and stepped into the aisle. Her hands trembled, but she raised her chin high. "I'm not playing, Your Honor. I know the law, and I know he's innocent." Michael's head snapped up, green eyes widening as he stared at the child. For the first time in weeks, something resembling hope flickered across his face. The prosecutor scoffed. "This is ridiculous. She's a child, not an attorney. She has no standing." "Enough," Judge Harrison interrupted, raising a palm. His eyes narrowed as he studied Emma. Something about her steadiness, the way she clutched her little notebook to her chest, made him pause. "What exactly are you claiming, young lady?" Emma swallowed hard. Her father's voice whispered in her memory. "Sometimes, Emma, the smallest voice can speak the loudest truth." She held her notebook like a shield. "I've been coming here for 3 weeks. I read all the documents. I listen to every word. Mr. Thompson is being framed, and I can prove it." Before the judge could respond, Bailiff Ramirez stepped forward and gently took Emma's hand. "Let's speak outside, miss," he said quietly. Detective Sarah Chen, who had been sitting at the back in plain clothes, followed. In the narrow hallway, Emma flipped open her notebook. The purple ink was uneven, some letters carefully traced from another's hand. Mr. Davis never argued back. Real lawyers object when the other side says something wrong. My dad taught me that. And she turned a page, pointing to a shaky number scrawled in the corner, 847. This account number kept showing up. On the bank statements, on the papers the prosecutor gave him. And yesterday, I saw Mr. Davis writing it on a lunch receipt. He wrote it with the letters VS. Detective Chen's sharp eyes hardened, her jaw setting. She leaned closer, taking the notebook carefully. 847, she murmured, then looked back at the courtroom. Davis was seated at the defense table again, his phone glowing briefly under the desk. His thumbs moved rapidly, too focused to notice Emma's watchful gaze. On the screen, just before he slid it into his jacket, 2 words flickered. "Package ready. Phase 2. Emma's pulse hammered in her ears. Whatever was happening in this courtroom was only the beginning. The heavy wooden doors of Courtroom 7 closed behind Emma with a resonant thud. The noise of the crowd inside dulled, replaced by the faint echo of footsteps and the hum of the courthouse's ancient ventilation system. Emma clutched her notebook tighter against her chest as Bailiff Ramirez guided her down the hallway. He glanced at her, unsure whether to treat her like the child she was or the witness she clearly wanted to be. Detective Sarah Chen walked just behind them, her heels clicking a steady rhythm against the marble floor. She had been assigned to quietly monitor the trial, but nothing had prepared her for an 8-year-old stepping forward with accusations of bribery against a defense attorney. Chen had been trained to spot liars, but what she saw in Emma's eyes was not childish fantasy. It was certainty, edged with fear. They stopped in a small antechamber lined with wooden chairs and a humming vending machine. Emma sat stiffly on the edge of her seat, swinging her legs just enough that the toes of her sneakers tapped against the floor. She opened her worn pink notebook with deliberate care, flipping past pages of looping handwriting, doodles of scales of justice, and small sketches of people she had seen in the courtroom. "I know I'm just a kid," Emma began, her voice quiet but unshaken. "But my daddy used to tell me to watch what people do, not what they say." Mr. Davis never tried to help Michael. Every time the prosecutor said something mean or wrong, he just sat there. She flipped a page, revealing a neat grid of numbers written in purple ink. And these numbers kept showing up. 8, 4, 7. It was at the end of the bank account they showed in court. And then yesterday, I saw Mr. Davis write it on his lunch receipt. She held up the crumpled slip of paper, the faint pencil scrawl, 847, VS still visible. Chen took the paper with a gloved hand and slid it into an evidence envelope. Her eyes flicked to the child. "You're saying you recognized a pattern?" Emma nodded. "It's what my dad taught me. When I was little, he'd make me circle numbers in the newspaper. He said people always leave trails even when they don't mean to. I just noticed." For a moment, Chen said nothing. She studied the small, serious face across from her. She could feel the weight of those words, the echo of a father's lessons still alive in this girl. Chen's instincts screamed at her that this was real. Back inside the courtroom, the atmosphere had shifted. Michael sat straighter, one hand gripping the blue folder that Emma had pointed out. Inside, the papers looked convincing. Wire transfers, fake signatures, ledger entries. But as the judge asked about them, Michael's voice cracked. "I've never seen these before. Not until just now." His words carried a raw honesty that rang against the marble walls. Why would I forge my own signature to steal from myself? The courtroom buzzed again, louder this time. Victoria Sterling's face tightened. She reached into her designer bag, her fingers gripping the handle too tightly. Her composure was cracking. Judge Harrison rapped his gavel. "Order. This evidence raises questions that demand answers. Court will recess while we review these documents." As the bailiff escorted the judge into chambers, Davis remained seated, shoulders stiff. He pulled out his phone, shielding it behind his case file. His thumbs tapped furiously. Emma, still clutching her notebook, watched him like a hawk. She leaned toward Detective Chen and whispered, "He's texting her. He keeps looking back at her." Chen tilted her head slightly, pretending to scratch her ear, but her eyes followed the lawyer's gaze. Victoria was sitting 3 rows behind the prosecution table, her perfect posture like a statue, but her eyes gleamed with cold satisfaction. Then, just for a flicker, her mask slipped. Her knuckles whitened on her purse strap. A shadow crossed her face. Emma's pulse spiked. She had seen that look before, on her mother's face, the night she left and never came back. A storm of betrayal and secrets she had never understood until now. She opened her notebook again, her small fingers tracing the rows of numbers she had copied down. On one page, in her childish but precise handwriting, she had written, 847, account number. Same as courtroom file. She tore out the page and pushed it toward Detective Chen. "It's not just a number, it's everywhere. On the papers, on his lunch receipt. It's like a code." Chen frowned, glancing quickly at the evidence, then back at Emma. "If this is real," she whispered, "we might have something big." Before Emma could answer, Davis's phone buzzed again. The screen lit up briefly. Emma's eyes darted to it, her brain snapping a mental picture. 3 words glowed in pale blue. "Package ready. Phase 2. Davis shoved the phone into his jacket pocket as the bailiff stepped closer. His face was pale but rigid, like a mask stretched too tight. Emma froze. She didn't know exactly what Phase 2 meant, but her stomach turned cold. She thought of her father's last words to her. "Be braver than your fear, Emma. Notice what others don't. Speak, even when no one listens." She looked through the small window in the antechamber door. Inside, Michael sat at the defense table, his hands pressed against the blue folder as though it were the last lifeline he had. He lifted his gaze again, catching Emma's eyes with his own. The shame she had seen before was gone. What stared back at her now was something else. Hope. Emma's heart pounded. She knew she had pulled a thread, and something far larger was beginning to unravel. And then, just as Judge Harrison's gavel struck to resume proceedings, Davis's phone buzzed once more. The words shone on the screen before the bailiff's hand snatched it away. "Package ready. Phase 2. Emma's breath caught in her throat. The real danger hadn't even started yet. The taxi screeched to a halt in front of New York Presbyterian Hospital, just as dawn's first light bled into the Manhattan skyline. Horns blared, tires hissed against damp asphalt, and the air carried the scent of rain mixed with exhaust. Emma pressed her forehead to the cool glass, her small hands clenched around her notebook. Every few seconds she looked up, scanning the sidewalks. She was the first to spot him, the tall man in gray scrubs pretending to read a newspaper near the hospital entrance. "Detective Chen," she whispered urgently, tugging at the detective's sleeve. "He's not a nurse. Look at his shoes. They're leather, not hospital shoes. And he was at the trial. He sat behind Victoria." Chen's eyes flicked to where Emma pointed. At first, the man's face was hidden by the paper, but when he lowered it, Emma's chest tightened. It was one of the same men who had followed them out of the courthouse. "Gray scrubs, east entrance," Chen muttered into her radio, her tone calm, but her shoulders taut. The man folded the paper, turned on his heel, and disappeared into the building. Emma's pulse spiked. "He's not leaving," she said. "He's getting ahead of us." Michael pushed the taxi door open before it had even stopped rolling. He reached for Emma's hand, gripping it tightly, his other hand fisted at his side. He had been passive for too long. "We're not letting them near my father again," he said through clenched teeth. The hospital lobby was already stirring with unease. Lights flickered, monitors beeped erratically, and a nurse rushed past clutching a clipboard, muttering about the power outage in the ICU wing. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic and burnt wiring. They reached the elevator banks just as an overhead announcement crackled through the speakers. "Attention staff, please remain calm. Technical difficulties in the cardiac intensive care unit. Maintenance has been notified." Emma's stomach twisted. Cardiac intensive care. She looked up at Chen. "That's where Mr. Thompson is." Chen didn't waste a second. She flashed her badge, demanded the elevator, and ushered them inside. The metal doors closed with a shudder, and the elevator began its slow climb. The digital floor numbers ticked upward. 2, 3, 4. Emma pressed her face against Michael's arm, but her mind refused to shut down. Her father had taught her how to stay calm in the scariest moments. People panic when they think they're out of time. Watch the clock, Emma. The clock always tells the truth. At floor 7, the elevator slowed. A hand shot between the closing doors. For a heartbeat, Emma thought it was the man in scrubs, but it was only a nurse carrying coffee. She exhaled in relief as the doors closed again. By the time they reached the 10th floor, the building was eerily silent, the usual hum of mock. Ines was broken by an unsettling absence of sound. No monitors beeping, no phones ringing, no footsteps in the hallway. "Stay behind me," Chen ordered. Her hand hovered near her holstered weapon as she stepped out. Emma peered around her, eyes scanning the hallway. That's when she saw her. At the nurse's station, hunched over a computer, a nurse with gleaming blood-red nails typed rapidly. A blonde wig framed her face, but Emma recognized the sharp cheekbones instantly. "There," Emma whispered, pointing with her notebook. "That's not a real nurse." Victoria Sterling looked up, and for one terrible second their eyes locked. The calm mask shattered. Fury contorted her features. She yanked a syringe from the counter, ripped the cap off with her teeth, and lunged toward William Thompson's Evru line. Emma's body moved before her mind could. She darted forward, sneakers slapping against the polished floor, and slammed her tiny hand down on the red emergency button on the wall. Sirens screamed, red lights flashing down the corridor like a living heartbeat. Victoria hissed through clenched teeth. Too late. She pressed the syringe into the port. Emma's hands, trembling but quick, shot out and clamped down on the IV tubing just below the injection site. The clear liquid hesitated in the line. "No," she shouted, her voice cracking. "Not him, not today." Real nurses burst from nearby rooms, drawn by the alarm. Detective Chen's voice rang out, firm and commanding. "Security to the CICU, now!" Two guards tackled Victoria as she struggled like a wildcat, screaming accusations at Emma. "You ruined everything. You think you've won? You don't even know what game you're playing." Emma's lungs burned. She felt Michael's hands on her shoulders, pulling her back, steadying her. He was trembling too, but his eyes glowed with a fierceness she hadn't seen before. He wasn't just the frightened man she'd first noticed in court. He was fighting for his father now, fighting for her. Dr. Martinez rushed in, checked William's IV, and shouted for a saline flush. "She barely got any in," he muttered with relief. "We caught it in time." Emma let go of the tubing and realized her knuckles were white. She glanced down. Her notebook had slipped from her grasp, lying open on the floor. Richard Davis bent to pick it up, but as he leaned forward, his phone tumbled from his pocket. The screen lit up. "Package delivered. Proceed to Phase 2. Emma's breath hitched. Phase 2? Her mind spun faster than her heart. If this wasn't just about Michael, then what was next? The hallway filled with agents in black tactical gear, weapons drawn, voices barking orders. FBI, nobody move! But Emma couldn't shake the feeling that the night's real danger had only just begun. The hospital's cardiac intensive care unit smelled of metal and disinfectant, but beneath the sterile scent lurked something darker, a metallic tang that reminded Emma of pennies left out in the rain. The fluorescent lights above flickered once, twice, then steadied, casting long shadows across the hall. Detective Sarah Chen scanned the dim corridor with the sharpness of a hawk. Her hand hovered near her weapon, but she didn't draw, yet. Michael was beside her, one arm steadying his father, the other gripping Emma's hand with a fierce protectiveness that belied the exhaustion etched across his face. They had barely taken 3 steps when Emma froze. At the far end of the hallway, a tall figure in a tailored navy suit emerged from the elevator. He moved with the quiet authority of someone accustomed to rooms falling silent upon his arrival. For a heartbeat, Emma thought it was another imposter like the nurse. But then the man lifted his chin, and the sterile light revealed the unmistakable features of Judge Harrison. Her stomach turned. Judges don't visit hospitals. "Hello, Miss Johnson," Harrison said smoothly, his voice stripped of the grandfatherly warmth it had held in court. Now it was sharp, calculating, cold. "You've been quite the little detective, haven't you?" Emma's legs trembled, but she stepped closer to Michael instead of shrinking away. "You're not supposed to be here." "Very observant," Harrison said with a mirthless smile. "But then, observation is your gift, isn't it? Just like your father." He adjusted the expensive watch on his wrist. Emma's eyes darted to the gleaming metal, and there it was again, the engraving. "To Frank, love always, Margaret." The same Frank Victoria had whispered to over the phone. Her heart clenched. Judge Harrison was Uncle Frank. Detective Chen stiffened, realizing it too. Her voice turned steel hard. "Judge Harrison, you're under investigation. Put your hands where I can see them." Instead, Harrison chuckled, spreading his palms in mock surrender. "Relax, detective. I'm not here to hurt anyone. I'm here to make a business proposition." His eyes slid to Emma, the way a wolf might regard a lamb. "You, my dear, have proven yourself very useful." Michael's grip on Emma's shoulders tightened. "You stay away from her." But Harrison wasn't looking at him anymore. His gaze locked onto the little girl. "With your testimony, we can bring this to a swift conclusion. You'll tell the court tomorrow that Michael confessed to you, that he revealed the location of the remaining accounts. Do that, and not only will you be safe, but so will his father." Emma's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst. "And if I don't?" she asked, her voice trembling but audible. "Then we move to phase 2. Harrison's lips curled into a smirk. "And believe me, you don't want that." Behind him, Richard Davis appeared, his suit wrinkled, his tie askew. He should have been in custody. Instead, he was flanked by 2 men in dark coats, faces like stone. "Davis." His eyes darted nervously, but he forced a grin. "The girl's scared enough. She'll do what we ask." Emma's mind was racing. Phase 2. She didn't know exactly what it meant, but she knew it was bad. Her father's words echoed in her head. "When you're scared, look for the detail everyone else misses." Her gaze slid back to the judge's watch, the engraving, Frank. Her father had scribbled 8:47 again and again in her notebook. Victoria had whispered, "Uncle Frank," when she thought no one was listening. The pieces clicked together with the certainty of puzzle pieces locking in place. Judge Harrison wasn't just corrupt, he was the mastermind. Emma's breath caught. If she revealed what she knew now, she'd be a target. If she stayed silent, William Thompson might not survive the night. "I'll help," she said softly, clutching her notebook so tightly her knuckles blanched. Her voice was steadier than she felt. "But I need time to decide exactly what I'm going to say." Harrison studied her for a long moment. Then, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, he nodded. "Wise beyond your years. I'll give you until 6 a.m. The hearing begins at 8. By then I expect your cooperation." He gestured to Davis. "Stay with them. Make sure our young prodigy remains motivated." As Harrison disappeared down the hall with his men, the walls of the hospital seemed to close in. The sirens still pulsed, red light flashing against the sterile white walls. Emma's throat was dry, her small chest rising and falling with quick breaths. Richard Davis dragged a chair across the floor and planted himself by the door, phone clutched in his hand. He stared at Emma with a mix of fury and fear, as if trying to decide whether she was a threat or a tool. Emma curled into her chair, notebook on her lap, pretending to nod off. But her eyes, half hidden behind her lashes, kept watch. She waited, patient as her father had taught her, until Davis's own vigilance began to fade. At 3 a.m., his head sagged forward. RD, phone slipping from his hand. Emma eased open her notebook to the page marked with a paperclip. The numbers glowed under the fluorescent light, 8:47. Next to it, in her father's neat handwriting from before he died, a single word, insurance. Her heart stopped. She finally understood. Her father hadn't just taught her to notice patterns, he had left her a breadcrumb trail. She slipped off the chair, her sneakers whispering against the linoleum, and tiptoed into the tiny bathroom attached to the room. From beneath her oversized dress, she pulled out the old phone she'd kept hidden all these months. She had charged it in secret every night at the community center, telling herself it was a way to hold on to him. Now she realized it was more than that. It was the final piece of his plan. Her fingers trembled as she dialed the number she had copied so long ago. The line clicked. Federal Bureau of Investigation, emergency channel, a woman's voice answered. Calm, sharp, alert. Emma swallowed hard. My name is Emma Johnson. My dad was Robert Johnson. He told me to call this number if Judge Harrison ever tried to hurt people, and he is. He's trying to hurt Mr. Thompson's father. They're planning something called Phase 2. There was silence on the other end, then the voice came back, urgent now. Emma, stay calm. We know about your father. He was working with us. If you're calling, it means the moment has come. Agents are already en route. Stay where you are. Whatever you do, don't let them move you from that room. We'll be there in minutes. Emma nodded, though no one could see her. She whispered, Okay, I'll be brave, Daddy. I promise. When she opened the bathroom door, Richard Davis was already on his feet, scanning the corners of the room like a bloodhound. His eyes landed on her, and for the first time that night, he let out a shaky laugh. There you are. Don't wander off again, Emma. You might get lost in a place like this. Emma hugged her notebook close. I wasn't lost, she said. I was finding something. Before Davis could reply, the elevator at the far end dinged open. Heavy boots thundered out and voices barked, FBI! Nobody move! The hallway erupted into chaos, but Emma's mind stayed fixed on one thought, sharp as a blade. Phase 2. Whatever it is, they're still out there. The cardiac intensive care unit was chaos. Red alarms still pulsed overhead, washing everything in a warning glow. Nurses rushed back and forth with trays of syringes and IV bags. Security guards wrestled Victoria Sterling into handcuffs, her blonde wig askew, her shrieks echoing down the hallway like a wounded siren. Emma stood just outside William Thompson's room, her small body trembling from adrenaline, her fists still sore from clamping down on the IV tube. Michael kept one protective arm around her, though his gaze never left his father, who now stirred with sudden, startling lucidity. Michael, William's voice was raspy but clear, the fog of sedatives lifting. His eyes, so like his son's, deep green and steady, found Emma. You must listen. She made me sign things, contracts. I didn't understand. His voice cracked with shame. She told me it was for the company, but I couldn't think straight. Michael's breath hitched. He had been drowning for months, believing his father had turned on him, believing maybe he had been abandoned after all. Dad, he whispered, clutching his father's frail hand. It wasn't your fault. None of this is your fault. Detective Chen leaned forward, snapping her fingers for a nurse to keep William stable. Mr. Thompson, we'll get every record, every chart. You just rest now. We'll handle the rest. But Emma wasn't resting. She crouched on the tile floor, flipping through her notebook with frantic fingers. Her purple ink notes were crammed into the margins, times, dates, numbers. And there it was again, 847, a sequence repeating like a drumbeat. At first she thought it was coincidence, the last digits of a bank account, but it wasn't random. She'd seen it on Davis's receipt, in the trial exhibits, and now on the glowing directory outside this very floor, room 847. Her stomach dropped. Daddy wanted me to see this. She remembered the page she had uncovered in his old law books, the one with the number scribbled in his careful handwriting and a single word beneath, insurance. Detective Chen, Emma whispered, tugging on the detective's sleeve. She lifted the notebook. Look, it's not just an account number, it's a code. Daddy used to circle numbers in the paper, remember? He said bad people leave patterns. This one, 847, it's like a trail. Chen's eyes flicked across the page, her mouth tightening. You're telling me your father planted this? Emma nodded. He left it for me. I think he knew this would happen. Before Chen could answer, Richard Davis lunged forward. Give me that. He snatched at the notebook, but Emma was faster. She clutched it to her chest, dodging behind Michael. Davis's phone slipped from his pocket in the scuffle, clattering across the floor. The screen blinked awake, revealing the same chilling text. Package delivered. Proceed to phase 2. Chen barked, "Ramirez, secure that phone, now." The bailiff scooped it up as 2 FBI agents in tactical gear stormed into the hallway. Behind them, Agent Sarah Mitchell strode with calm precision, her badge raised. Her eyes landed on Emma. "You did well," she said, her voice low but firm. "We've been tracking this ring for 3 years. Your father was one of our informants. You've just given us the last piece we needed." Emma's breath caught. "My daddy, he was working with you." Mitchell nodded. "He was a hero. He risked everything to expose Harrison. Before he died, he left us a number, 847, as a key. We didn't know what it meant. Now, thanks to you, we do. It's not just one account. It's the tag they've been hiding in every transfer across 12 states. That's the breadcrumb trail he planted." Emma's vision blurred with tears, but her grip on the notebook tightened. Her father hadn't abandoned her to chaos. He had prepared her for it. Every late-night lesson, every puzzle, every whispered word about noticing what others missed. It was all training. Suddenly, a shout rang from down the hall. One of Harrison's men had broken free, charging toward the stairwell. Chen drew her weapon, but another agent tackled the man before he could escape. In the struggle, Davis's recorder slipped from his coat pocket, clinking against the floor. Emma crouched to pick it up. She pressed the play button. Harrison's voice crackled out of the tiny speaker. "The Thompson fortune is ours once the old man is gone. The girl? She'll make a perfect witness. 8 years old. No one will suspect her testimony was coached. Remember, phase 2 begins the moment Victoria is compromised." The hallway went silent again, except for the hum of machines coming back to life as power surged through the ICU. Chen's jaw tightened. He recorded himself. Agent Mitchell smiled grimly. He thought it would protect him. Instead, he's just handed us everything we need. She slipped the recorder into an evidence bag. "This is the nail in his coffin." Inside the room, William Thompson was now fully awake, his voice steadier. "Michael, Emma." He looked between them with eyes shining. "Your father, Robert, he was braver than anyone knew. He found their scheme. He refused the money. He wanted to protect you both." Emma's throat closed. She clutched her notebook as if it were his hand. "He left the number. He wanted me to finish what he started." Michael knelt by her side, his eyes wet. "You did more than that, Emma. You saved my father. You saved me." For a fleeting moment, warmth pushed back the cold. Emma let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, justice could win. But outside the window, the black sedan was still parked on the curb, its tinted glass hiding whoever sat inside. Emma caught a flash of metal, binoculars. A shiver raced down her spine. She tugged Chen's sleeve again. "Detective," she whispered. "Someone's still watching. Across the street." Chen turned her head slightly, her posture tightening again. Into her radio, she murmured, "Eyes on the ground. Black sedan, east side. Possible hostile surveillance." Before the agents could respond, the stairwell doors banged open. A second man stepped out, tall, sharp suit, expensive cologne that cut through the smell of antiseptic. He walked with the confidence of someone who belonged anywhere. Emma's heart stuttered. She knew that face. She had seen him every day at the trial, always scribbling in the back row. Now he walked toward them, his eyes locked on her with something colder than anger. "Who is that?" Michael whispered. Emma's voice was barely audible. "He was at the courthouse. He was always writing, always watching." The man turned, and the sterile light revealed his face fully. Emma gasped. It wasn't just any man. It was Judge Harrison. Only now, there was no warmth in his eyes, no trace of the weary grandfatherly figure behind the bench. His gaze was steel, his jaw hard, his smile a predator's grin. "Good morning," Harrison said softly, stepping closer. "Shall we discuss phase 2? The corridor seemed to tilt when Harrison stepped out of the stairwell, as if the building itself recoiled from him. He took in the scene, the toppled chair, the IV bag swinging gently, Emma's notebook pressed to her chest, and smiled like a man greeting old friends at a funeral. "Good morning," he said, voice low and unhurried. "Shall we discuss phase 2? Michael moved, not fast, but decisive. One step forward, a quiet wall between Emma and the judge. Chen's stance shifted a fraction, weight dropping to the balls of her feet. Somewhere behind them, a monitor found its heartbeat again. Beep, 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 and the sound threaded through the moment like a metronome for danger. "You shouldn't be here," Chen said. "Put your hands where I can see them." He did, palms open, the engraved watch catching the fluorescent light. "To Frank, love always. Margaret." He never hid it. "Predators never believe the forest can see them." "You mistake me," Harrison murmured. I'm here to keep a child from making a very adult mistake. Emma didn't look away. Her hands were trembling, but she kept the notebook pressed flat against her ribs to still them. My dad said the only mistake is letting a lie sound like the truth. Your father, Harrison said, and for a moment something sly flickered in his eyes, was useful, as are you. Tomorrow, you'll tell the court what Michael confessed to in this very hallway. That will end it cleanly. No more alarms, no more running. Michael's voice rasped. I didn't confess to anything. Harrison glanced at him as if at a bothersome draft. No, you didn't, but she will say you did, and they will believe her. 8-year-olds don't lie about such things, unless someone taught them. Chen's hand hovered over her holster. You're done talking. On the contrary, he took 1/2 step closer. The air changed, everything craned toward him, unwilling. I am saving lives. You think what happened in that ICU is the worst of us? You have a father waking up, Mr. Thompson. You have a partner in the wind, detective. And you, he turned back to Emma, have a mother whose choices are not what you think. The words struck like cold water. Emma felt the old ache split open, the one that lived under her ribs where her mother's last who. She should have gone. Don't talk about her. Harrison studied her, then glanced at Davis, who had crept back to the doorway, jacket rumpled and recorder-shaped outline sharp beneath the fabric. Mr. Davis? The time? Davis checked his phone with a jerk. 4:58. Excellent. 2 minutes. He lifted his eyes to the ceiling, as if listening to a second conversation the rest of them could not hear. Phase 2 will arrive right on time. What is Phase 2? Michael asked. Harrison's smile thinned. Phase 2 is what happens when you put too much faith in rules. You people forget. Rules are just stories we all agree to tell together. Phase 2 is a different story. Emma's fingers tightened on the notebook. Her father's handwriting pressed into her skin through the paper. Insurance. The number sat below it, stubborn as a knot. 847. It was on the bank slips, on the court filings, on Davis's receipt, on the room directory. Everywhere, like a whisper at the edge of hearing. She looked at the watch again, to Frank. She saw Victoria's knuckles whitening around her purse, Davis's eyes cutting to the back row in court, the orderly with leather shoes, the power blinking in only one wing, the wing with records, the sedan below the window. The needle halted in the IV tube because her small hands made it stop. Patterns. People leave trails. Her mother's voice rose from a kitchen long ago, a summer of chalk dust and pencil shavings. Numbers are just ways to hide letters, Em. Make your own alphabet and you can send messages nobody else can read. Her mother had laughed then, spinning a battered silver ring around her finger. 847. See? If 8 is H and 4 is D and 7 is G, I can spell hide in 4 digits if I want to. It's all a game of maps. 847. She blinked, the corridor snapping back into place. The code wasn't just her father's breadcrumb. It was a signature. A door at the far end of the hallway punched open. 2 men in suits stepped out, exactly wrong for a hospital. Too crisp, too shiny, too deliberate. Davis shifted toward them, relief in his shoulders. Don't, Chen warned, gun out now, voice iron. Everyone stays where they are. Harrison didn't move. His phone buzzed once in his jacket. He looked at Emma, then past her to William on the bed, awake and watching, mind clearing like fog burned off by a cold sun. You've made us work harder than we like, Harrison said, and for the first time there was annoyance under the velvet. But a network this large survives noise. You are noise, and you recorded yourself, Emma said. A quick surprise lifted his brows. Did I? Davis flinched. Agent Mitchell appeared at the corner, badge up, agents stacking behind her with that frightening calm federal teams carry like a second skin. You did, she said. And then your lawyer dropped the recorder. We heard every word. For a heartbeat, nothing moved. The men by the door straightened, calculating distances, angles, odds. The sedan outside idled, a machine's slow breath. Harrison's eyes cooled to slate. He almost looked bored. You came early, he said to Mitchell. This city used to know better than to interrupt its elders at their work. Mitchell's mouth didn't bother with a smile. We've been listening to your work for 72 hours. Title III signed and sealed. Your calls, your handler chats, your little pep talks about stories and rules. Her gaze slid to his watch. Cute inscription, Frank. He didn't glance at the watch. He looked at Emma instead. You think you've won. Emma felt the fear pawing at her ribs, but it couldn't get through the knot of something firmer underneath. I think we changed the size. Tori. Davis moved then, Little darting steps as if the floor had heated and he had to hop. His hand dove to his pocket. The little black rectangle slid to the tiles and skittered, an ugly, stubby device with two tiny antennae. "Jammer," Chen said, and kicked it away before his fingers found the switch. "So that's how you killed the cameras." The lights steadied. The red alarm glow faded to an ugly afterimage on the walls. Somewhere, from a floor below, a radio crackled with the flat relief of confirmation. Garage contained, black sedan secured, driver in custody. Harrison watched the hallway fill with agents, watched his men put their hands up, not because he told them to, but because men who survive long enough learn to see when the horizon is already on fire. He lifted his chin. "You're celebrating too early." Mitchell didn't blink. "Maybe. Show me why." He turned his hands over again as if displaying a magic trick to a child. "We're not thieves," he said, and he almost sounded proud. "We're engineers. We place pressure where a system can carry it without screaming. A conviction here, a liquidation there. The money moves like water. You can dam one river, and the flood finds another bed." "Unless someone salted the water," Emma said. It came out before she knew she would say it. The certainty was so clean it felt like a bell. Mitchell's head tilted, a quick, sharp bird movement. "Emma?" "It wasn't just Daddy." Emma took a breath. The knot inside her loosened just enough to let air pass. 847 shows up because someone put it there on purpose, not because bad people are sloppy. They used an obfuscation tool to wash the transfers, to make them look clean. Somebody built that tool. If they signed it with a number nobody else sees, you can follow it anywhere it goes. "And who would do that?" Harrison asked lightly. "Your paralegal father?" "My mother," Emma said. Silence folded over the corridor, tight and complete as a sealed envelope. She hadn't known it until the moment the words left her, but the truth of it filled her like heat. Sarah's tired eyes, the way she'd hum and tap 8, then 4, then 7 on the table as if keeping rhythm only she could hear. The sudden way she left that didn't look like leaving so much as being peeled away from something sticky and dangerous. The calls that never came. The ring she stopped wearing. Magpie her father had sometimes teased when she was coding, always stealing the shiny bits from bad nests. Mitchell's radio hissed and a voice said, "Confirm, codename Magpie, embedded trace tags across hashes per doc. Crosscheck shows 847 watermark in 12-state flow." Harrison's lashes lowered, a slow contempt. "She was a contractor," he said. "We needed a wrapper for the ledger masks. We paid well. People like getting paid." "She left you a brand you couldn't see," Mitchell said, "and a map we could." Footsteps skidded. A woman in scrubs turned the corner too fast and almost collided with an agent. Then she saw Emma, and the world narrowed to a single point. The woman's hair was the wrong color, cropped blunt and dark, her face thinner than in memory, but her eyes were the eyes Emma saw in mirrors when she practiced being brave. "Mom," Emma said. Sarah stopped, chest heaving, hands up without being told. She looked older, the kind of older that happens in months, not years. Relief and terror fought on her face. "They said it was time," she whispered. "They said I could come." Harrison didn't turn. He didn't need to see her to aim the last barb. "She didn't come before," he said softly. "She left you with puzzles because puzzles are easier to love than people." Sarah flinched like he'd hit her. "I left because you told me if I didn't, you'd put both of us in boxes and lower us into the grow biome." "But," her voice steadied, "I stayed alive so I could finish the code." Emma's knees wobbled. Michael's hand found her shoulder. William's voice, steady now, drifted from the bed. "Emma, I'm here." Mitchell's agents moved like a tide. Cuffs clicked. Rights were read. The men by the door stared at the floor as if it might